Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Enhance Your World show. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Alba. Larkin will be joining us shortly. And today's topic, we're going to talk about the unconditional love of life, our experiences, our relationships, but when to discern when it's time to let go or to work through the challenges of conditionality so we can grow together. I'm really excited about this topic. It's something that over the last year or so I've been really working on for myself. In the past, business relationships, personal relationships, romantic relationships. As soon as there was a little adversity, um, um, you know, there's in unity, we're all polarities of energy, right? As individuals, and collectively, in our relationships, we ebb and flow. And the goal is to find harmony within each other, and that's where our intentions, that's where our communications come from, um, and the practices, the commitments, the all those kind of come into play. And so there isn't a right way or a wrong way from my view. Every situation is unique. And that's one of the things that we talk about a lot with presence, is understanding that everything is energy and everything's flowing. And if there's resistance, then it's blocking our potentiality for life, for love, for manifestation, for achievement, for experiences, whatever. The old paradigm is, go to school, go to college, get a job, get a family, create a family, you get a mortgage, and grow through life in those material ways, those man-made ways, the systematic ways. And through this new awakening, if you want to call it that, through these new awarenesses, through these new spiritual practices, not really new spiritual practices, but the more popularization of the spiritual practices, as well as the quantum science and mind science and things like that. We were talking last night after ceremony, and we were talking about, how do you lead somebody through an experience if you haven't personally experienced it? We can get all these teachings. Hi, Larkin. We can gain all these insights, and we can gain all these practices. There she is. Hi, Larkin.
Hey, welcome. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be on in a few minutes. I'm running around. Cool
Okay.
topic. I thought we were doing a different topic, so that's cool.
Oh my goodness.
I want to listen. I want to hear what you're talking about, so I can keep talking, so I know what we're talking about.
Well, talking about unconditional love, and when is it right to let go of our expectations, and when to embrace them, right? What is our truth? What is important? Being in the flow. Sometimes our energies can fall out of harmony, right? And then how do we get back into harmony, so we can continue to walk together through our individual growth as well as our relational collective growth. I was sharing some personal stories, about sometimes I let go of friendships and partnerships as soon as there was adversity. It was like, oh, you're not walking the same way I'm walking. I'm not going the same place. You're not going the same place as me. you don't do this, you don't do that, whatever. And that through that challenge, I failed to grow, in a sense, within those relationships. And it's been really cool for me over the last few years. I know I talk a lot about my family, because um, they've really taught me unconditional love. Even though it's been challenging, we don't always see eye to eye. We have different priorities, different ways we want to do life, show up in life. But working together collectively, we've gotten to witness and experience all these wonderful things. And I just held another, Don Eduardo had come, from the Inca tradition from Peru, yesterday, and we did ceremony. And we had a great group of people here, and it was just really cool to experience this in a new way, in a new light. And my dad helped, prepare the ground, and he went and cut grass, and he did all that stuff because I was at an expo, and I didn't have time to do it. So he helped prepare the ground so we could hold ceremony. And to me, that's amazing. I'm so grateful for that opportunity, and to grow our relationship the way that we have, because 10 years ago, we didn't have a relationship. We didn't talk. We were at odds, and it's been through our communication and challenging each other and asking questions, and the natural cycle of growth, where we're finding that homeostasis, we're finding that harmony. And I think it's so awesome to be in that space, and not just let go of the potentiality, because things get tough. A commitment is a commitment. And you if you make a commitment, it's, in my view, to be in integrity. You continue to hold that commitment as a priority. But when the other people that you're walking with, maybe they don't have that same discipline or the same commitment as you. And those are some of the signs, I think, that maybe it's not going to work. When somebody's always finding fault in what you're doing, but doesn't take personal responsibility for the parts that they're playing, it makes it really hard to stay in unity. Even though we're all unified on the consciousness level, in this 3D reality of duality, and ego conditioning, because it's all identity. It's the only thing that really separates us from our nature, is the ability to create communication, and how we create our reality through the way we think, the way we feel, the way we behave, creates the ultimate in manifestation and results. It's fun to walk with people that have been doing what we do for the last over a decade or so, because we've all come into these deeper insights that it's not an instant manifestation. You can live any way you want to live, but sometimes it takes time to get there. You have to practice. You have to build a network. You have to build support systems. You have to gain awarenesses and knowledge and skill sets and all those different things. I mean, we don't go to the gym one time and go lift weights and then we're pumped, and we don't have to keep going back to do that. In fact, the more consistent we are, the stronger we get, the lighter the weights get, right? The weights don't actually change, but the struggle, the challenge gets easier through consistency. And Alan Watts, and there's all these beautiful Eastern philosophies and all these different things that just say, oh, just let it go. If you love somebody, you're going to let them go when it's not working out. Well, if that's the case, how are we ever going to grow through the adversities, the shadow stuff, the unconscious stuff, the subconscious stuff, to actually empower our human existence through our conscious creative abilities? And I think that's a responsibility that we have to have as human beings, as we're growing into this new earth, as we're growing into this new way of existing as humanity. And I don't think it's a new way. I think it's a unlearning and relearning of the past, and taking what worked and letting the rest go. The systems and the processes and the rules and regulations and expectations and all those different things create such a divide within our humanity, that it's really challenging sometimes to find common ground. Working with people from all over the world, of course, we have a language barrier many of times, but at the same time, we understand each other, and we're able to work together in the ways that we do, because our commonalities, our goals, is to help Pachamama, Mother Earth, and humanity heal from the mindsets that elevate some and descend others. When we talk about authenticity, authenticity is, we are emotional. We have emotions. We're emotional beings. It's energy in motion, and the labels we put on it can create blinders. As I was speaking this weekend at an expo, I asked the crowd, have you ever been angry at something that you didn't care about? Have you ever been frustrated by something that didn't matter to you? And of course the crowd said, well, no. And I'm like, well, then doesn't that say that how much you really truly care about something? You're just looking at it from a different perspective. You're looking at it from a lower vibrational stance, it's not meeting our expectations. And instead of sitting back in love and saying, okay, how do we allow this to work for us, rather than separate or continue to just slam our heads up against the wall in frustration. And I think that's an important thing as we're walking through this journey. I mean, everything is unique. So, we try to talk about concepts here and not black and white. At least, that's my intention. I won't speak for Larkin. The how-tos and the things to look for and that kind of thing, those are perspectives, and we're multi-dimensional beings. So, you can't just, it's not black and white. It's not just this one way, and sometimes we have to let go of a temporary challenge so we can grow and revisit it later. I don't know if Larkin's going to come back on here and talk about this or not. But
I've been on. I've just been listening, waiting for you.
Oh, okay. The thing that I'm curious about, have you ever had the experience of being in a friendship or a relationship that wasn't working out, and you guys just kind of parted ways for a while, but then a year or so or whatever time frame goes back, and all of a sudden the universe puts you back together, and it becomes very beneficial for both, because we got our chance to do our own work. We got to see what the other person brought to the table for us and what we brought to the table for them. And we can realign to go and do greater things than we would have in the past if we just stayed in our expectations and saying, well, you're not doing this for me, or I'm not doing that for you. Okay, let's just break up because I don't want to change. I am who I am. Take me as I am, and if you can't take me as I am, then adios. I found growing with people, you're gonna go into conflict, and the closer that you are to them, the more challenging it can be sometimes, because you don't have that distance and space to come back into harmony with yourself. So then your relationships can mirror that. How do you feel about that, Larkin?
Absolutely. I think this is going to be, I'm sharing some of our posts here so more people can see we're on.
Okay.
I feel like this is going to be a very, this could be a very heated conversation, because I agree with all of your concepts. But I have the absolute opposite view and opinion on so much of what you just said. And I don't think it's actually, it's not contradictory in its ultimate purpose.
Sure.
But I grew up with Alan Watts. I absolutely agree with him. And I feel like in the letting go, and I think there's a balance here. So you'll hear me say both. I think that I don't take the keeping the people in your life or sort of, I don't want to use the word hanging on because that's not what you're doing. I'm not taking them to some of the extremes maybe that you described. In other words, I've done a lot of the same thing that you were describing doing. Only I think I did it in the opposite order that you did. It sounds as though you were more likely initially in your life to walk away or let the people go or let the relationships or whatever go initially, and you've learned that you don't have to do that.
Right.
Whereas I've been the opposite. I'm a very keep everyone together, sheepdog type of person. No matter what, no matter how bad it is, be loyal, stay together, keep the group or community together. We can fix things. And I had to learn the opposite, which was, which is why I appreciate what Alan Watts says. I appreciate I had to learn to let go.
Right.
And I'm still learning that.
Sure.
I had a friend in college who let everything go. She was an Aquarian, and she had so much air. I mean, she was almost all air and Gemini, for those of you that can appreciate that. And so for her, she was always moving on from things very quickly. She was bored fast, but it was really a gift and a blessing because she was very good at, recognizing. So although sometimes she did this when she didn't need to, but recognizing, okay, time to move on from this and that. And if it's the right thing, it'll come back.
Right.
And I was so grateful to her because this was at a time in my life where no matter what, I wanted to keep everyone together, everything together. We can work it out. I love you. If you're alive, I love you. Right.
Right.
And so that was like, oh my God, like she was a really good example for me to have. I think she did a little too much to the extreme.
Sure.
She ended up doing it to me. Like best of friends. She ended up doing it to me. But it caused, it was part of that for her was a lack of, it was a substitute for what she couldn't communicate. You know what I'm saying? Like, in other words,
absolutely,
it's just easier to run away than to communicate.
Right.
And I think like in our circumstance with me, there was a point in our relationship at which she really stepped over the line and did some very unacceptable things. And it takes a lot to make me angry. I was angry.
Right.
And I think she became very angry at my response and my reaction. because I recognized what was going on. I still don't know the full story, and it doesn't matter. I have to let that go.
Right.
But my point is that I think there's a balance, like in what I think I would have started this broadcast probably saying the exact opposite of everything you said,
Good.
but coming to the same part in the middle, because there is a balance. And I think one of the things that we can really focus on today is bringing to people's attention how to make that assessment on your own.
Right.
How to make that assessment of, when to let go, when not to let go, and do you even need to make that choice? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. What I have found over the years is that a lot of times you don't have to make that choice, and there's a way to allow. And again, this is ironic because I'm always telling people, it's all about choices. Make choices. It is. When you make a choice, it's more powerful. Mm-hmm. When you make a choice, you are stepping into your power. However, I think it's important that we learn to look at the signs, and we learn to, it's a choice. What is the extreme? I think here's several questions people can look at. What is the extreme of the situation, and is there one? If there is something detrimental going on in this relationship with you and this person, and you're seeing it's not just like maybe a one-time deal, but are you seeing habits and patterns?
Right. Okay. Well, especially outside of just your relationship, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other thing is and this is, I'm going to make a weird turn on this that might kind of confuse people. But the other thing is it, not is it you or is it them so much, but,
right.
We tend to get out of our own lane and pay so much attention to other people.
Right.
I would ask people to consider, well, how much of this is you and something that you need to work on and your challenge that may indicate that what's going on in the relationship or the situation is just a lesson for you and something pointing to something you need to work on. As Eckhart Tolle says, like a pointer within you, mm-hmm. right? There's always something. I mean, that's going to be the answer to every challenge you have to some extent.
Right.
How much of it is that? Is the challenge for you that, or is the challenge, hey, Natalie, or is the challenge for you knowing to uphold a boundary and walk away?
Right.
Because sometimes the challenge is this person is giving you that opportunity, and it's just something you have to get through in the relationship or the situation. You don't have to bail or let them go or walk away. But sometimes the message is, hey, this is a pattern of energy you're allowing in your life. This is something you need to clear out.
Right.
Or let go. And I think this all goes back to, because I teach people to remember who they are. To me, this goes back to standing in your power again, self-awareness, being okay making choices, and then allowing life and the universe to make their chess move.
Right.
Right. So sometimes, I'm not one that typically burns bridges. Okay. Sometimes obviously that happens, but I'm usually not the one burning the bridge, but I might set up a situation where in my choice, that bridge is burned because that other person or situation might then not accept or respect my boundary or what needs to happen on my half. Right.
Or hold themselves accountable. Right.
Absolutely. So I think what happens is when you make your own powerful choice and you take radical responsibility and you get out of someone else's lane or that other, the job or the business's lane or whatever the case may be, and you stay in your lane and you make the choice you need to. And I think this is really the answer here. And I think this is also really what Alan Watts was getting at. Only I think if people don't recognize the standing in your center aspect that he was talking about, they miss this part.
Right.
It's you're not so much saying, get out of my life or whatever. Sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes you have to say, oh, this is not for me. But if you make the choices from your center, what happens is the people that aren't in alignment with you will usually walk away on their own. Unless they're stalking you or they want something from you, they will lose interest or get upset with you because you're not doing what they want, and they will leave.
Right.
And I'm not saying negate your responsibility or your choice onto them, dump that onto them and make them do it so you don't have to be responsible. What I'm saying is in life in general, if you do your part and you take responsibility for your part and you make the choices you need to make for yourself, and I'm not saying you're not making them for community, but what I'm saying is if you're really making them powerfully for yourself, it contributes to community.
Right.
And what I have found when I have done that, even people that I would never do not want in my life, and guys, that is okay. I want to talk about that later too. It is okay to have standards and not want people, even that you love in your life. We become the 5 people we surround ourselves with. So when we keep in our lives people that, and I'm not saying you can't stay in relation with people, but there are different levels of people at an unhealthy conscious plane. It's one thing to have them there as clients or to assist and to help them or to have them at a distance, perhaps in a community in a certain capacity. It is another to hold them close in your life.
Right.
When you hold them close in your life, they will impact and program your mindset.
Right.
And they will impact your energy and your progression. And so this is not a snooty comment. This is, in this case, it's best not to be close to them. And if they catch up and come back at a new and grown capacity, then that's fantastic. But I think to simplify this entire conversation, it's about alignment and it's about frequency. And you are either going to rise to your best, highest level of frequency and allow everyone and everything else to fall away so you can grow and progress, then they can follow if they want or rise to the occasion. Or you're going to keep yourself at a lower frequency, maybe to stay with those who aren't as conscious, only to find that if they surpass you, they're not going to wait for you.
Right.
So in other words, there is no waiting. We're all on this spiritual journey. We're going to pass each other coming and going. And I think we really have to stay focused because ultimately for all of eternity, I said this yesterday, we are responsible for ourselves and ourselves only. So in a community, yes, we have a responsibility. But on our spiritual journey and our own behavior and choices, we're only responsible for us.
Right.
And that is the best way to be a part of any community that we need.
So, no, all good, and just kind of set up some scenarios.
Yeah.
If someone, someone wants to spend their free time, watching TV, drinking beer, whatever, like just relaxing, and you're trying to grow a business. I mean, this is what happened to me with most of the people that I grew up with, right? I took a different path. I dropped out of high school, and then got into business and started businesses and things like that. So my focus was different than those that I was in school with, growing up with, because they were just, well, most of them were still in high school. So, they wanted to go out on the weekends, and it's like, no, I already have commitments, and I think that's the way nature kind of separates us, right? It's like, I'm going to go do my thing. You can go do your thing. And if we meet back up, then that's great. But if we're not walking together in the same vision of what we want in life, then it does become a little difficult, through the conditionality. But then at the same time, as you were saying, if we only hang out with them once a month and we really enjoy their company, then it's not going to affect us that much. But if we're trying to hang out all the time, something's going to have to give, right? Someone's going to have to change what they want to do to be in relation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's true. That reminds me, we've got to remember that our relationships with people can and will always change.
Right.
And that's part of the growth process,
right.
And that is okay.
Right.
I think we need to, I think it's easy for us to not want change and to, look at our lives and our relationships and our friendships and go, oh my gosh, like, this isn't what it used to be, or it's not the way it used to be. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's perfectly fine.
Right.
And we need to be okay with that, because we have to allow for growth.
Right.
We have to allow ourselves to, part of growth is taking away and adding to, letting go and bringing in.
Right.
And so I think we tend to, you said something in the beginning, I don't remember the exact words you used, but it's pretty much about, like, how do you look at, perceive, and label your relationships with other people? And we all tend to label all these things, and we need to, as human beings. That's okay. That's how our brain processes and categorizes, and we actually need to do that. The way that we need to do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. The difference is, even judgment is there to help us.
Right.
The difference is, how are we using it? And right. I think it's very challenging with all the influences that we have in our lives. We're constantly influenced by other people's opinions and, social media and friends and family and colleagues and all of that. And I think it's important to remember that even the very topic that we're discussing right now includes the fact that, and I said this yesterday too on my live, our thoughts are not always our own. As a matter of fact, beliefs are repeated thoughts. Hey, Billy. Beliefs are repeated thoughts. And so if you look back and you take a thought or a belief and you really backtrack with that, you might be surprised where you find that it comes from. Because in your relationships or opinions, or even your participation in something, where initially is that coming from? Mm-hmm. You can tap it all the way, you can go all the way down the rabbit hole. Where, what is your opinion or thought about that particular person, and why? Or why have you let this person go or not let that person go, and why?
Right.
These things are all important. You probably will find anything that is a core belief that you have or a habit that you have comes from belief and perception based on past experience, which is also in regards to the beliefs that go into how you perceive that past experience, which usually has something to do with how we were raised or how we were influenced growing up, because that's really when our subconscious mind is the core is programmed before we're the age of 6. So most of what we have to change and transform as an adult comes from, age of 6 or younger. And then on top of that, you have your regular, beliefs then associated with that. And where does that come from? It comes from social media, TV, songs, music, movies, friends, colleagues. And where are they getting their programming from?
Right.
Right? So you are being, even if you go back generation after generation with things, you're being programmed and don't even know it by literally thousands of people and ideas and thoughts and beliefs that have been reprogrammed. And you're influenced by what everybody else that you've interacted with or social media you've been subjected to has been programmed with and sort of like mutated. So I just want to bring this to people's opinions or people's thoughts here in this topic, because you need to become the gatekeeper of your mind. And really, this is why it's important to really remember authentically who you are.
Right.
Because if you really want to align what you're choosing to let go of and keep in your life, or what your opinions and beliefs are, you need to go back to, okay, where did these even come from? Are they really mine? Were they influenced by where I was and who I chose to be around? Or are these really in alignment with me? Sorry, I didn't mean to ramble on, but I think this all connects here. Right. I think this is a really important link to make in this connection.
Right, and I think that's where differences of our lifestyles, you know, so many people, and myself included, you know, create this paradigm. You know, it feels like, we'll call it the comfort zone, right? Like, we know what's going on. We feel like we have some level of control. Things are going the way they're going. And it's like an invisible fence, you know, like an invisible dog fence. It kind of keeps us trapped from exploring outwardly, but it allows things to come in for us, right? And when we reprogram ourselves, because it's just conditioning with conscious intention, right? And change your music, change the things that you're watching. I mean, and this happens naturally. I mean, I listen to more flute music now than I do, and drums, and what would, even classical music, than ones with words. And that changes my vibration. If you're going to sit down to watch TV, or you're watching entertainment, or you're watching some kind of documentary where you're gaining new perspectives that you didn't have before, are you hanging out with new types of folks from different, like if you get to travel, you get to see how different people live. There's always the commonalities. I mean, the reality of it is this westernized, you have to always be achieving, you always have to be conquering and overcoming, and that kind of stuff. That's not everybody's way of life.
Not reality.
Right. I mean, the reality is we need food, we need water, we need companionship, we need shelter. Those are the things that we need to live a successful life. What's your definition of success? Well, mine is to survive the best that I know how to, and thrive through adversity. Not that I'm always able to accomplish that, but that's my definition of success. I used to think that success was based on the outward manifestations, the results, the rewards, that kind of thing. Look at, what I have to offer, and, or what I can give away, or whatever. And I found, for myself at least, that success is an ever-growing process. I think it was Winston Churchill that said success is going from temporary defeat without losing enthusiasm, or failure to failure without losing enthusiasm, because that is about transmuting the limitations of our past, and finding greater reason, finding greater teachings, finding greater practices that allow us to expand our human capabilities of who we are and how we serve. If we think about purpose, what is our purpose in life? And when a lot of people think their purpose is to, and again, this is, everybody has their way and their right to walk their walk. The question is, are you harming people? And it's been my experience when I only focused on me, I came very destructive with other people and then eventually myself. When I focus on how it serves the whole, it has made things um, a little more easier to see both the shadow and the light. You know, the obstacle and the opportunity, right? And be able to move through that with grace and compassion and understanding. For me is my goal anyway.
Yeah, I think, that's the thing, is the obstacle is the opportunity.
Right.
And I think this brings up a lot of other interesting, all of this stuff really connects, right? Just the fact that first of all, I love what you said about the music. Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I love when you can listen to something without words. Hey, Robin. When you can listen to something without words that's neutral, and you can really find something that is fit to what you need at the time. You can just feel it. Mm-hmm. You can just feel it within you. This is what I need to, for what I'm working on, or to balance out, what I need right now, or to pull forth feelings that I'm, diving down into. That's so important. Mm-hmm. But I also think that, you're talking about the individual, and our society is so, and guys, this is for money purposes. So again, I think we need to clearly define for everybody what we mean by focusing on others and community, and not just focusing on us, and focusing on us. I think this is a very, very important distinction, because I absolutely agree with you. And I think that it's very easy to misconstrue and kind of confuse what that actually means. I think it's very easy to do that. In other words, I think that, our society teaches us, make it all about us, right? Because then that way they can make money off of us.
Well, and it keeps us weak.
Yeah, absolutely. What it does is it focuses you in on ego. Mm-hmm. Right? So if you're focused in on ego, then it's very easy to, to feel sorry for yourself, to, feel lonely, to compare yourself to others. There's all sorts of things there that can happen. And so I think that that's important to keep that in mind. And we need to make a very clear distinction between, like, for example, the coaching clients that used to come to me, like the women that would come to me for business coaching, for example, they had been very much sucked into that. They were very sucked into the, where am I as compared to everybody else? And am I, working more hours than another person, but I'm not making as much, the whole, it's part of the whole me first thing.
Right.
Really, our society encourages. And it's one of the main reasons why we have so much depression and anxiety and all that. In those regards, when you focus on you, it's going to make things worse, like you were talking about. Mm-hmm. However, on the flip side of that, there's another side of, we have a tendency to focus on us and what we want, and make in us being first and having our way, and are we happy or not? But on the flip side of that, we are taught not to take responsibility. And it really needs to be the opposite, right? Mm-hmm. We need to, like you said, focus on serving and helping others. That helps us to start to heal and not be so egocentric.
Right.
By the same token, though, that means we're doing the opposite of the first thing you described.
Right.
We also then have to take radical responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So in our society, we're taught to blame others and look for fault for others and depend on others to. But at the same time, we're taught, not to take radical responsibility. So I'm summarizing this up so you guys know what I'm saying, because I'm so wordy about it. But what we need to do is take the radical responsibility upon ourselves, but then serve others. Right. And what you find is when you begin to do this, and this is what you did, Chris, this is really what you're describing. When you do this, there's a healing that takes place. The focus is taken away from the illusion of, I'm not good enough, I don't have enough, I should be depressed because, I'm not ahead of this person or doing that with that part of society. That goes away because you're so focused on the service. But yet your inner journey is you shifting into your power. And I think this is a major shift. We could have a whole topic on just that.
Right. Well, and the reality is no one's farther ahead or farther behind, because we always share the present moment, right? The only thing that really separates us is our intellect or our possessions or, those types of things. Robin asked, can we provide an example on what's programmed belief and how it affects the capacity to be in a conscious relationship? The thing that comes to mind for me right now, just with a thought, is what's cheating? Some people think if you're talking to somebody of the opposite sex, that's cheating. Or maybe, as long as I'm not lying about it, as long as I'm open and honest about it, well, then that's not cheating. And, having a conscious relationship is sitting down and saying, what are our expectations of this? What's okay? What's out of line? What I feel comfortable with right now, what I would like to feel comfortable with later, how much trust do I have within myself? How much trust do I have within my relationships? And it doesn't have to be sexual. I've had friends that, I used to share with them that I felt like we were having an affair because, their significant other wasn't walking the path or studying the same thing. So they weren't able to have, these spiritual type teachings or talkings or doing these practices, or, they're focused more on the material world than, the mental, emotional, spiritual aspects, and finding someone else that resonates with you in that vibration can bring up insecurity and challenge. And then the question is, do you want to work through it or not? Or are you going to just stay where you're at? And this is who I am. This is who I want to be. And I'm not willing to shift myself for this relationship, because it all comes down to choice. And do we, as a collective, choose to walk together as a community, or do we choose to walk solo? The African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together, comes to mind, because it's actually our diversity of our relationships and of the people that we have in our life that leads to higher awareness. If everyone thinks the same, feels the same, does the same, believes the same, how is there ever going to be contrast for growth? Larkin?
Sorry, I had to find the mute button. I keep muting you and my dogs are barking.
Yeah.
I think that's true. And I think, again, we have to remember, guys, a lot of this is not a complicated choice. A lot of this is simply remembering and being aware of what's natural. What does nature do? Mm-hmm. What does the universe do?
Right.
And sticking by that, because when we as individuals, and then of course collectively, go against the natural ways of the universe, we are going to run into, and not obstacles necessarily that are opportunities, but just, we're going to run into bumps. We're going to find it difficult. We're going to find things difficult because we are nature. We are the universe. We are God's source spirit. So, here in this world, it's easy for us to kind of, step into our illusion, which is really contradictory to that in a lot of ways. So we are on an individual path for all of eternity, but yet we are one. So it is our existence is our one little corner and responsibility where we can do our part. And so, yeah, when we can coordinate and work together, that's fabulous. But we also have that wiggle room to be the individuals that we are. And that's part of what makes, the whole. I don't just mean even community, guys. I mean like the whole, our oneness, what it is. It's all part of that evolution. And so, when we are, it's too big and grand for us to always run around not focusing on what we need to do. It's too easy for us to get in everybody else's lane. But when we focus on our part and our responsibility in that collective or with that partnership, this is the thing that I keep emphasizing to my coaching clients. Ultimately, you are responsible for you. So no matter how we talk about this today, it goes back to, where are you? What's your alignment? Where are you choosing to insert yourself, or what role are you choosing to be or to play in that? And that's very important. I think that there are countless examples of where we have programmed beliefs. I mean, where aren't there? I guess would be my answer. Where aren't there? It's everywhere. If you really get into neuroscience and you understand, and I know, a lot of you listening do understand. I know Natalie's been coaching with me with this for a couple of years, but we have a tendency to focus on just the spiritual aspect, or just the mindset aspect, or just the emotional aspect, or just the physical aspect. And the truth is we are eternal conscious beings with a body and an ego. The body is actually connected to an extension of that ego. A lot of people don't realize that. Our physical body is just an oscillation of energy. That's all it is. Mm-hmm. We're inside and outside of that. The egoic self is a great blessing and a gift, but it has to learn to be worked with. So when we're talking about the programming, our human brain is meant to be programmed. It is there to be programmed. And that is part of the human aspect. And the beauty of that is we can pick what we want to do with the programming we've already had. And our eternal conscious self can choose, okay, the programming I've had doesn't serve what I really want to do, who I really want to be. And we can choose that. And it's hard. It may be very difficult, but we can choose and make a change with that. Right. You might as well assume that anything and everything that you are exposed to is programming you. So everything you listen to, every person you talk to, every response you have, that your subconscious mind is recording even the things that your reticular activating system, the part of your mind that filters things out so your brain doesn't explode, it's selecting all of those, and it is processing and filing them faster than you could possibly be aware of. And this is why when we try to change habits, or we try to make changes in our lives, this is why we run into so many challenges, because we don't always know why we have the beliefs that we have, why we make the choices that we make, why we fall back into the habits that we have, whether that be addiction or procrastination or whatever the case may be. But it's deeply rooted in there. And the thing is, Chris keeps talking about being in the now. We don't have to go all the way back and drum up every little thing that ever happened to us and what that means and why we're doing what we're doing. We don't have to do that.
That's just feeding the mind. That's just feeding the ego.
Well, it can actually be helpful in awareness and understanding.
Absolutely.
But you only have to do that in certain parts. This is why obstacles or opportunities, challenges will come up for you that will bring those out. And then when those things are brought out, what you find is that you can heal and change and fix so many other things that are connected to that. So let's say you have a big challenge in one relationship and you're crushed over it, and it becomes your obstacle that's an opportunity. If you can get through that, how you handle that, the awareness that's created through that, the different powerful choice that you make in that maybe you wouldn't have made before. Mm-hmm. All of those things combine to allow you to step into your power and make a more evolved, more conscious choice. As you make that conscious shift, guess what happens? All those other relationships, all the other pain and baggage that you made is also elevated, is also healed, can also then you can be used for greater understanding. But it only takes that one scenario, right? Because if it's about that particular topic, let's say the topic is being self-conscious or being fearful or telling a little white lie, whatever it is, if you make the powerful choice and you make the turn and the transformation once, and you're then aware of it and you make that change, then all of a sudden you might have healed 10 years worth of issues.
Right.
So I just think I think it's important to remember that this is why you need to be the gatekeeper of your mind, because everything is programming. I mean, you could use every single example of everything you were exposed to yesterday, and that would be your example. And I know that sounds dramatic, but it's actually true, because your subconscious gives meaning to things you don't realize it's giving meaning to. And then this impacts what we let go of, who we let go of, what we hang on to. And I think I want to quick share this little recipe for making a choice. I used to tell my clients, when you have difficult choices to make, ask yourself, is this hurting me or helping me? Is this serving me or not? And I think if you're saying, thank you, Robin. I think if you're saying something, I'd modify that now, because sometimes, things can hurt. They can hurt us. But I think a more neutral, better way to ask that is something serving me in the, if we say the greater good, what tends to happen is we tend to get more confused.
Right.
But, is something serving for the better or not? And then people get, really confused about that. Does that mean community or does that mean me? But remember,
both.
You're contributing to that community.
Mm-hmm.
You could just say, is this a higher vibrational choice? Is this choice in alignment with me or out of alignment with me?
Right.
With my authentic self. And I think that's very important, because that should be the ultimate question. Right. That should be the ultimate answer. And sometimes, does it feel good isn't the right question to ask, because sometimes feeling good just means feeling familiar, which means going back into our comfort zone.
Right.
Right. So I would definitely modify that from what I used to say.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, and our relationships test where we are in our reality right now. They either bring out the best in us or the worst of us. The healed parts or the unhealed parts, right? And it is my belief, I guess, or opinion, that if you're grateful, if you have gratitude for whatever you're receiving, you'll create a new, you'll be given a new awareness that allows you to evolve from the old ways. And when people are showing up in our lives that have a particular, like when I was in as an entrepreneur, I was always trying to attract the right people to grow businesses. I didn't really necessarily ask myself, is this person honest? Is this person compassionate? Is this person understanding? And it was more of like, can they help me go from A to B? Can they help me grow my, the businesses, or can they help me with this event or whatever it is? And what I realized is those core authentic things have to be chosen for that individual. The skill sets can be learned. So when we have an intention of our commonalities and say, well, we'd like to create this, how do we get there? What are the resources that we have at right now? And what do we have to acquire beyond this now moment to get us to that level? It does allow us to be more true and authentic. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And I think you're right. I think because that's what it has to come down to, right?
Right.
It really has to come down to our core beliefs. It really has to come down. Well, I don't want to say our core beliefs, but it does end up coming down to our core beliefs. It has to come down to, it should come down to authenticity, which brings us to maybe what we can talk about next week. I'm not trying to cut us off now. I'm just saying, I think talking about, that brings up the question, really, what is authenticity? Because everybody thinks they're authentic.
Right.
But they're not. And you keep going down those layers. What really is authentic?
Right.
Because the more we make choices off of and respond in authentic ways, the more in alignment things come to us easily.
Right.
So we're living in a world that, in order to disempower us and control us, it tries to use fear and greed and all these other things in order to keep us from being authentic.
So I'm just going to play devil's advocate for a moment. Would you say the golden rule, do unto others as you'd want others to do unto you, would tend to keep us in our authenticity?
Yes,
more than, well, I had to do what I had to do.
I don't think they're as contradictory as people think.
Right.
I think, again, guys, from an ego perspective, things can be very mutually exclusive. Like you're always reminding us, nobody's ahead or behind anybody. Okay, well, that's true. But there are different levels of consciousness that we each go through. And that has nothing to do with our value or our equality. That has nothing to do with all of us having the same universal access to source. We all are equal in that we have the exact same opportunities universally, energetically, soul-wise. There's truly no hierarchy there. What creates the egoic perception of the hierarchy, though, is yourself. This is very difficult to explain. But what creates that is your own choice as a soul. The choice you've made in heaven, in non-physical, the choices you make in each lifetime, you decide where you are on the conscious hierarchy. You decide. So, you know, unfortunately, as human beings, to communicate, I have to use terms, which makes it sound like I'm going back into saying there's a hierarchy. There's not. But what we forget is we have free will. And we have this, we get to choose more than we realize. And a lot of it's about realizing what we choose. So I think when we're talking about do unto others as you would want done to you, I think there are many layers to that, and people can sort of warp them the way their ego wants to.
Mm-hmm.
But for example, let's talk about enabling for a minute. Do unto others as you would want done to you. Well, let's say you've made the same mistake 100 times and you want someone to bail you out of something. I think that, you know, that again is each person has their own lane there. Mm-hmm. The person doing the helping or the enabling has to be aware of, am I helping or am I enabling?
Right.
But again, we often forget everybody has free will. Mm-hmm. So let's say you come across a homeless person on the street and you see this homeless person every Sunday, and every Sunday you give them $10 and they take that money and they go buy drugs with it every week. Now, here's the thing. Is there a right or a wrong answer there? I don't think there is. The right or wrong answer falls into the egoic category.
Right.
You can say, no, I'm not giving this person any more money because I know they go right off and spend it on drugs.
Right.
Okay? That is your choice. Mm-hmm. That's not a right or wrong. Well, their ego could say, well, I'm hurting them by giving them okay, they're going to find the money anyway to buy drugs.
Or they'll steal it. Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to get it in either way.
Right.
So keep that in mind, right? And the other thing is, you know, so much of our reality, guys, is what you believe. It's what you perceive. So if it's a person saying, I'm going to go ahead and give them the $10, that's their choice. Each time I give it to them, that's an opportunity what they do with it. And yes, I'm a part of that.
Right.
That's fine. If they want to say, no, I'm not doing that because I'm not just throwing $10 away and I don't want my energy to be a part of that person's lane, that's fine too. That would be me, right? I don't even want to be a part of that lane. That's their choice. That's a different world. I don't want to be part of that.
Right.
They're going to get the money and drugs anyway. You know, I'll smile and wave at the person.
Right.
So neither one's wrong, but both are a choice. So which one is in alignment to a person really caught in ego? Oftentimes the people most caught in ego, hi, Diane, are the ones that are the sweetest and the most enabling and, oh, don't let him be hurt. That's also being caught in ego.
Well, sure. And they don't really help either. You know, like we need friends to tell us, hey, you're effing up, man.
Right.
Like, you're out of alignment, you know, like, you know,
yeah. Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't.
Well, and that's where you have to take radical responsibility, right? And say, oh, you know, I see your point. I'm still choosing to do that. If you don't want to be in my life because I'm choosing to do that, then I understand. But at the same time,
you there?
Yeah, I just lost my train of thought.
Oh, that's okay. I thought maybe you froze because of where I had my computer. Okay.
Yeah, I totally just dropped what I was.
That's okay.
Thinking. So, but you know, to me, it's a part of love and compassion to guide people to a higher alternative than where they currently are. And that's why I chose to walk this path that I've chosen, and why I've chose to do the podcast and all that kind of stuff. Because if what we have to say or what we have to share gets someone to go within and look at themselves and say, you know what, I could do better in this area, and I'm going to work towards that. It's like learning a new language, right? I'm going to be more compassionate. I'm going to be more understanding. I mean, if you've ever been, if you've ever lived on the streets or have had to go without because of whatever, it's easier for us to empathize with somebody else's situation, whether they're an addict or my brother lived on the streets for a long time as for a while as an addict, and thank God he did, because that's when the system caught him shooting up in his vehicles and forced him to get to take the path that he's on now. And so I don't think there's a right or wrong way. It's just when is the time? When are we going to choose to, as you would say, evolve into a higher way of being, a higher vibration? And sometimes that takes someone to have some guts and say, I love you, but you're effing up. The choices you continually make or the way you're currently living is hurting yourself and hurting those around you. And if you can really take an honest, compassionate look at yourself and agree with them, then the choice is, now I can go do something about it. If we go, F you, you can't tell me who to be or how to be, I want you out of my life because you're trying to hold me accountable to a higher standard than I want to hold myself. Again, that we have that choice, but how are we raising the vibration of community by not standing in our power and helping somebody overcome a challenge in their life, whether they see it as a challenge or not?
Well, and here's the thing too. I think if buy them lunch, yeah, it sounds good. I'm hungry. The thing too is we have this limited
Oh. I wonder if she's going to come back on. So, I don't want to close. Oh, there she is. Good.
Pad of my computer and it just went bloop. So I think one of the things that's really important is that we understand that, trying to remember where we are with that. There's different levels of, based on our consciousness, there's different levels at which we will respond. So a lot of people will see a person, like, for example, before when I was mentioning some things to a person in a more of an egoic place, will think that someone who's actually being more conscious is being harsh or being cold, right? So for example, if you're talking to friends or family and you're saying, the person keeps maybe repeating, oh, poor so-and-so, oh my gosh, like, oh, I feel so bad for them, oh, and then a person that might be more conscious, meaning they're more in tune with who they are, they're not necessarily so what's the word I want to say, not necessarily run so much by their mind, might say, well, they're just gonna have to figure it out. Now, to the person more caught in the egoic place, that's going to seem cold, uncaring, rude, heartless. It's not. You go to some of the greatest teachers on the planet and they would give a very stoic, live and let live response. Why? Because it's our own choice.
Sure, but that's the old way of thinking as well.
Well, yeah, and so I think each situation is individual.
Mm-hmm.
We have to obviously approach each situation individually, but people, I mean, as a coach, this was a really hard lesson. people will only do what they're ready to do.
Right.
And so a lot of times, like one of my favorite things is, if someone is arguing with you, you're just, okay. Half the time when you're like, okay, like you're making it clear that's not your opinion. You don't agree with it, but that's okay. They can have that.
Yeah.
Even if they're going, this is all your fault. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, if you believe that, that's fine. And have it not affect you. You'll notice that typically that person will start arguing with themselves. Like they'll try to keep arguing at first. Sure. And what you're doing when you do that is you're stepping out of allowing them to use your ego to feed their ego.
Right.
And then what are they left with? They're left like on their back going like this because they want to fight.
Right.
And as uncomfortable as that appears, or a lot of people say, oh, that's manipulative. It's not manipulative at all. It to the ego, non-egoic interaction always seems like there's something wrong with it. It's manipulative, or it's controlling, or it doesn't care because why? Because the ego always wants to pull. And again, guys, I'm not bashing the ego. The ego is a good thing. It's important, but we don't want to.
A healthy ego is a good thing. A damaged ego is the problem.
Well, ego in and of itself is there for us to use if we can become aware of it and master it.
Right.
When it becomes an unhealthy ego, it's because it's been allowed to run amok. So all this talk you guys hear Chris and I talking about self-awareness and being conscious of your mind and learning to choose your thoughts, that's all about putting that ego in the back seat, because it is a tool that you have to have as a human, but you just don't need to let it run your life.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, sounds good. I think we did a good job today. I'm about ready to wrap up. You have anything else to say, Larkin?
No, I just want to remind everybody that to check the YouTube channel and make sure that you subscribe to that. If you know people that are interested in, creating change and transformation, really getting their struggling and suffering under control or into perspective so that they can create transformation. If they're interested in, their own individual work and or improving and contributing to community, any of the things you guys hear us talking about, invite them to subscribe to the page, invite them to, join us here every Tuesday at noon. Yay. Thank you, Kim.
Thanks, Kim.
Yeah, there's so many topics, and share with us as well, guys, either on the rebroadcast here or in the comments. Let us know what specific things you'd like us to talk about. We can do that. And we're going to be coming up with some events in the near future as well. So
yes,
that's all I have to say.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I love the way you close out. You do such a great job.
Okay.
So with that, thank you for joining. Much love and gratitude for everything you are, do, and choose to be. And we'll see you next Tuesday starting at 12 o'clock.
See you next week, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.